Hey Film Buffs, welcome back to Film Feature 43. Today we're going to do another 43 Vax video, this time answering the decades-old question,
what's your favorite scary movie?
With my favorite scary movie, and the movie that revitalized the slasher genre as a whole, Wes Craven's Scream, which came out in 1996. So without further ado, let's get into talking about the facts. Kevin Williamson was inspired to write the screenplay for Scream whenever he was watching a news story about the Gainesville Ripper while house-sitting for his friend, alone, and that kind of creeped him out, so he got the idea for the film, and he also wanted to make it more comedic and meta, in the same vein as Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Scream was shot under the title of Scary Movie, which, even though the name was changed, obviously, the words Scary Movie show up 5 separate times throughout the film, which was supposed to be a callback to the movie's title, but it was changed due to the fact that Bob Weinstein's gross brother, Harvey, liked the Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson song of the same name, Scream, so that's where the movie got its name.
We were not happy at all that they changed the title. You know, it was a mandate. It was absolutely a mandate from Bob and Harvey.
In the end of the movie, in the credits in the special thanks section, Wes Craven said no thanks whatsoever to the Santa Rosa City School District Governing Board because the movie was originally supposed to be shot there, but after they read the script, thinking that it was a comedy and realizing it was a slasher, they had a town meeting with a lot of people voicing their opinions whether to allow the movie to shoot there or not.
The entire scientific community has reached a consensus that violent viewing is harmful for people.
Ultimately, the school board decided no, and that made Wes mad because they had almost everything ready to go there, but the community had a pretty good reason. A lot of people were still reeling from the murder of a 12-year-old girl, so Wes eventually came around to seeing their point of view years later. Matthew Lillard never intended on auditioning for the role of Stu Macher. He was actually across the hall when he was saw by casting director Lisa Beach.
The day that Matthew Lillard came in, he happened to be across the hall with his girlfriend who was working with another casting director, and I looked at him and I said, you look good for this part. Would you mind coming in and auditioning, please?
But on the opposite end of the spectrum, Courtney Cox lobbied super hard for the role of Gail Weathers because she wanted to shed her good girl persona that she got while being on the TV show Friends. She wanted to play a bitchy character.
I wanted to play the part of Gail Weathers because she was just a total, it was something that I hadn't got to play in a while, at least being on Friends for so long.
And didn't think anybody would take her seriously in a role like that, which actually makes sense because filmmakers turned her down initially because they didn't think she could be bitchy enough.
Move your fat tub of lard ass now!
David Arquette was originally cast as one of the teenagers, but liked the role of Dewey better, and
I do get to kiss Courtney Cox,
who he later married, so mission accomplished. So he asked for the role of Dewey, which, luckily for Dewey, David Arquette's performance saved him for the sequels because Dewey was originally supposed to die at the end of Scream.
Every time this dude enters a room, he ends up a goddamn shish kebab.
Craven actually shot 2 separate endings, one with Dewey living and one with Dewey dying.
And we all kind of looked at each other and said, we'd be really stupid if we didn't film a shot of Dewey coming out being alive. And so we did. We stuck it on the last day of shooting there.
That's why at the end of the movie, if you see Dewey on the porch when Gail's laying next to him after he's been stabbed, you won't see him breathing because he was originally supposed to be dead. Kevin Williamson envisioned Molly Ringwald for the role of Sidney Prescott, but Ringwald turned them down because she didn't want to play a teenager at the age of 27, and Wes Craven originally turned down filmmakers because he wanted to get out of the horror genre after he finished filming a movie he was working on at the time, which was a remake of The Haunting that never actually saw the light of day. But with the casting of Drew Barrymore as Sidney Prescott and a 12-year-old kid coming up to him and telling him that he's gone soft, he decided to take the role as director.
A little kid, I think 12 years old, somewhere around there, coming to me and saying, you should do a real movie again because you've been doing, your movies are getting softer and softer.
The stage was set for Drew to be Sidney Prescott and the star of the show, but she decided that she would rather be like Janet Leigh and be killed early on in the movie to shock audiences, and that almost made Wes Craven quit until he saw Neve Campbell on the TV show Party of Five and went to her personally asking her to be Sidney Prescott because he thought that she could be an innocent character but also physically and mentally strong to take on her killer. With the location and cast of teens being set, they needed their killer. They went through multiple concepts of what the mask should look like, ultimately finding the Ghostface mask that we know today in a house while scouting a filming location for another movie. And now that they had the mask, they needed the rest of the outfit. They decided to make him look more ghostly. They were originally going to have Ghostface be completely white, and then they thought about it for a couple minutes and decided that that's probably not a good idea, because even though he looks more like a ghost, he also looks a lot more like a Ku Klux Klan member, so they scratched that idea.
Does he look like Casper? And obviously, you know, you put a guy in white with a white mask, you don't want him to look like he's in the Klan either.
After going all black, they had the look, they just needed the voice for the Ghostface killer.
What's your favorite scary movie?
The original plan was to have Roger Jackson read the lines during filming and then dub over his voice in post-production, but he was so good that they decided to keep his voice, and he is the Ghostface that we know today.
With the murders and all, it's like right out of a horror movie or something.
Wes Craven purposely kept Jackson away from the rest of the cast, so while they were talking to him on the phone, it led to a more genuine reaction from the actors.
It was always a point to keep us separate, because my job is to frighten them during the filming.
During the phone calls with Casey,
why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
What did you say?
and Sydney.
Hello, Sydney.
Jackson was actually on set in real time making phone calls through a cell phone to make it more suspenseful and give a genuine reaction to what he was saying.
The question isn't who am I? The question is where am I?
And now the filming has begun, let's talk about the most memorable and longest scene to shoot for the movie, and that's the party at Stu Macher's house. The big reveal having two separate killers is a huge twist, and this scene allowed Matthew Lillard to pretty much chew the scenery.
I go back and watch that, I'm like, first of all, I weigh 80 pounds. Second of all, I spit my way through the whole thing, and that vein that runs through the middle of my forehead is terrifying. I mean, that alone should have just automatically kicked me out of Hollywood in general.
And that's what makes me like him so much, but his most memorable line was completely improvised. Skeet Ulrich did not mean to hit Matthew Lillard in the back of the head with a phone. He had fake blood on his hand that was actually really sticky, so he was trying to fling the phone off of his hand, hitting Lillard and leading to the improvised line. 50 gallons of said fake blood was used for the filming of the movie, and it consisted of mostly
corn syrup. Same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie.
Another honest reaction that we get in this film is when Billy has a look of shock on his face when he's hit with the umbrella from the closet. The reason that was so real was a stunt performer was supposed to hit a pad on his chest, which he missed, and hitting Skeet Ulrich in the chest in a scar from an open heart surgery he had when he was a kid, so that look of pain was actually real. Earlier in that scene, we see Randy Meeks giving a tutorial on how to survive a horror film, and on the TV behind him, while he's giving the rules, we can see a knife that looks like it's about to stab him in the back. That's actually done on purpose as foreshadowing for the scene where Ghostface is about to stab Randy on the couch, but ultimately doesn't. As many of you know, Randy telling Jamie Lee Curtis,
Jamie, look behind you. Look behind you. Turn around. Behind you.
Is actually a meta reference to the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis and the actor who played Randy, Jamie Kennedy, share the same name. But what you might not have known is that that is actually Skeet Ulrich in the Ghostface costume, and it's the only time that he actually got to wear the costume on set. Ulrich asked to specifically do that scene in the Ghostface costume because every other time it's worn, except for the exception of 2 times, it is a stunt performer wearing it, which means that my favorite Ghostface killer, Matthew Lillard, actually didn't get to wear the Ghostface costume while on set. Yet. The 2 other people that got to dress as Ghostface on the set was Neve Campbell when she stabs Billy and takes off the mask, and director Wes Craven got in on the Ghostface and getting hit in the head with a phone fun in the first scene of the movie. In the first scene where Casey Becker hits Ghostface in the mask with a phone, that's actually Wes Craven wearing the costume, and Drew Barrymore actually hit him in the face with a phone. And it's not the only cameo Wes has in this movie. He's also the janitor named Fred that Principal Hembry yells at and apologizes to in the hallway, which is an obvious reference to Wes Craven's most memorable character, Freddy Krueger, from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Another piece of foreshadowing we get in this movie is when Principal Henry is yelling at the two kids for wearing Ghostface masks and running through a hall. That's supposed to foreshadow that they're actually two killers. And Principal Henry's death actually wasn't in the original script. It was added for two reasons. The first reason is Bob Weinstein said there was a lull in murders, so there needed to be one added in the middle of the film, and that gave Kevin Williamson a reason to get all the students to leave Stu Macher's house for the climax of the film. One death that was in the original script, but was a little bit different, was Tatum's death. She was originally supposed to have a prolonged fight with Ghostface in the garage, and then be crushed by the garage door coming down, which I find a little bit more believable than the world's strongest garage door opener. But it was changed when the assistant to Kevin Williamson saw the cat/dog door in the garage, and they thought that that would be a cooler death. However, Rose McGowan had such a small frame that she kept falling out of the doggy door, so the production crew had to nail her to the door by her shirt so she wouldn't fall out.
They actually had to nail me to the inside of the garage door so I wouldn't fall through. And I have bruises from hanging and like screaming and going up and down and up and down.
Another horror movie reference to mention real quick is Linda Blair, who played Regan in the Exorcist films, plays the Auburn reporter who yells, "The people want to know, they have a right to know." And one more horror movie reference, in the beginning of the movie you can hear Casey's dad tell her mom,
"Get in the car. Drive down to the Mackenzies.
No, my daughter.
Let's go. Call the police."
That's a reference to the original 1978 Halloween, where Laurie Strode tells Lindsay and Tommy to do the same thing.
Out the front door. Now I want you to go down the street to the Mackenzie's house. I want you to tell them to call the police.
And it was actually flipped on its head in Halloween H2O, when Laurie tells the teens,
"I want you to drive down the street to the Beckers. It's a mile down the road. Tell them to call an ambulance and get the police."
And much like the teens who left the party to go see Principal Henry's body, much of the cast and crew were looking for any excuse to leave the party scene, which they collectively called Scene 118.
It just went on and on and on. We were at that location forever.
It took 21 days to get the final act of Scream shot, and by days I mean nights, because they would begin as soon as the sun went down and end as soon as the sun came back up.
Just kind of seemed endless that we were up at this house and just night after night.
And that's why it's jokingly called by a lot of the cast and crew the longest night in horror history. Finally, the film had wrapped production, but it wasn't smooth sailing. It had to be submitted to the MPA 9 separate times.
Although Craven initially refused to cut anything from his movie, Dimension Films could not afford to gamble on an NC-17 rating.
A lot of gore was cut out, and the MPAA still wanted to give them a NC-17 rating. The three scenes that the MPAA had the most trouble with was the slow-motion stabbing of Casey Becker, the self-stabbing of Billy and Stu, and Billy's line,
"Don't you blame the movies! Movies don't create psychos! Movies make psychos more creative!"
On the slow-motion stabbing of Casey, the MPAA wanted Wes to replace it with a less gratuitous shot of her being stabbed, but Wes lied to them, saying that that was the only shot that he got of that scene, which wasn't true, but he got to keep the shot that he wanted. That wasn't the only lie told to the censor board. After submitting it 9 separate times, Bob Weinstein finally stepped in and told them that the movie was supposed to be a comedy, and somehow that appeased them and got the film an R rating.
And I said, "Bob, what did you say to them?" And he said, "I told them it's a comedy. It's a comedy, it's a satire."
Scream was released 5 days before Christmas to give horror fans something to watch during the family-friendly time of year.
What Bob said is, nobody comes out with horror films at Christmas, and all of a sudden,
The film opened at number 4 at the box office, making about $6 million, which led the studio to believe that it was going to flop. But due to word of mouth, getting that ball rolling, it ended up making domestically about $100,000. And due to that second wind, it stayed in movie theaters for 31 weeks, which is pretty unheard of for a horror film. And in the US, not adjusted for inflation, Scream was the #1 slasher movie of all time until Halloween 2018 came out. And on that list, it was always Scream 1, 2, and 3 to have the top 3 spots until Halloween. And what impact did the movie have on the world as a whole, not just the slasher genre or the horror genre in general? After the film came out, caller IDs went up 3-fold, so you could say it did a little bit of good.
Who is this?
You tell me.
Corey Gillis, 555-0176.
That's all the facts I have for the movie Scream. Let me know down in the comments what's your favorite scary movie or scary movie franchise. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.